with us today, we have Dr. Angeliki, or Kelly Martino, who is an ecologist who has been working on biological invasions and applied entomology, focusing on integrated mosquito management and more recently citizen science. She is the head entomologist and PI at the Joint Services Health Unit and the research affiliate at the Cyprus Institute and Enalia Physis. Thank you so much, Kelly, for being with us today, and the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Christiana, for the invitation. Can you hear me clearly?
Perfect, just fine, thank you.
Okay, let me share my screen. So many thanks for this invitation. And I have named this presentation before Pablo Escobar, alien hippos, ladybirds, and mosquitoes. So today, my talk is going to be about invasive alien species, and hopefully you will see why I chose this title. 70% of declines in wildlife populations have been documented, according to a WWF report since the 1970s. And there are many reasons for these declines, and many anthropogenic pressures or drivers of change, as they're otherwise called, like the changes in land and sea chains, the direct exploitation of organisms, the climate change, pollution, and last but not least, invasive alien species. And I'm here today to talk to you about invasive alien species. And I was very lucky to be involved at the IBES assessment, at the Intergovernmental Panel Assessment for Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services. And we've done a report about invasive alien species. And let's see the definition first. So invasive alien species are one of the 5 major drivers of biodiversity loss, and you can see there is a range of different organisms and different taxa that they can cause negative impacts on nature, but also on people. So alien species in general are the species that are being introduced by people, either intentionally or unintentionally, into new locations, and invasive species are a small fraction of the species. So you can think of alien species like ET and an invasive alien species like the little monster from the movies next to you, but you have to always remember that alien species and invasive alien species are introduced by humans. One of the species that I'm mainly working with is are mosquitoes, and this is the invasive alien mosquito Aedes albopictus that has arrived to Cyprus last year, and it's actually a cause of concern at the moment in Europe because it causes dengue in several countries. But as you can see, there is a variety of alien species, and I know that in Enalia you have a focus on marine species, and also you've done work on the lionfish, which is one of the invasive marine species, and many, many more. So I'm going to just tell you now a few things about the assessment report. I was one of the 86 nominated experts from 47 countries. And we did this assessment, this global assessment, and we had the help, luckily, from 200 contributing authors. And a few of these authors are from our group here in Cyprus. So I'm very proud about the young scientists who helped me. And we reviewed 13,000 documents in total. And we were supported by a technical support unit in Japan, which was great in supporting all the work we were doing regarding the assessment. And this is Helen Roy, Professor Helen Roy from the UK Centre of Ecology and Hydrology in the University of Exeter. And she was one of the 3 leaders of the assessment. And this photo is from yesterday when she gave her talk at the Cyprus Institute on the IBES assessment from the British High Commission. So it has been a very intensive invasive alien species week, I would say, this week. So we had several author meetings, most of them online, but the first one was in Japan. And we reviewed many documents, and also we had workshops, and we placed some focus on indigenous local people as well, who are the people who are mostly affected by invasive alien species. as they are living in more pristine environments. And I participated in chapter 4, and chapter 4 was looking at the impacts of invasive alien species on nature, but also on nature contributions to people or otherwise non-ecosystem services and the good quality of life. So biological invasion is the term used to describe the process of introducing a new species, an alien or an alien invasive species into a new location by human activities. And you can see that there were some very beautiful graphics in this report. And I'm going to present you now some of the findings of this report. So there are 37,000 alien species globally, and 200 alien species are introduced into new locations. And a small fraction of these 37,000 species, 3,500 are invasive. And actually more than 2,300 species are found in pristine or more pristine environments where indigenous local people live. And you can see here on the right side that there are many, many different species that are invasive. So the impacts that we collected, the data that we collected on the impacts, they mainly come from the US. So we have more documentation in the US, in Europe and Central Asia, less in Asia Pacific, and even fewer in Africa. And actually what we found is that conservation areas or even remote areas are affected by invasive alien species. And also most of the impacts that we have, the documented impacts come from the terrestrial realm, but also that we have some impacts recorded from the freshwater realm and also from the marine environment. But it's not a surprise that most of the documented impacts are from the terrestrial realm, because it's easier to collect the data in the terrestrial environment as well. So what it was evident from the report is that current policies are insufficient in managing biological invasions and in preventing and controlling invasive alien species. Although most of the countries have some kind of targets for management of biological invasions, 83% of the countries do not have national legislation or regulations, and almost 50%, almost half of the countries, they do not invest in the management of invasive alien species. And you can see there are many mechanisms by which invasive alien species are impacted in the environment, so they can change the ecosystems. Their impacts are quite serious. They can be predators or herbivores. They can compete with native species, but also they can cause diseases, parasitism, poisoning, toxicity, and physical disturbance. Also, invasive alien species do not just impact nature, have negative impacts on nature, but also on the economy, food security, water security, and human health. And of course, indigenous local people in more pristine lands are going to be disproportionately affected and the most affected. And just a few numbers now on the impacts. Invasive alien species are globally responsible for 60% of extinctions. And this is also true for island environments and mostly for island environments, and in combination with other factors or alone. So they can drive extinctions by themselves, but also in combination with other drivers of change, such as climate change or land and sea change. And they cost $423 billion per year, according to an estimate that was done in 2019. And also negative impacts are recorded for nature, but also quality of life and nature's contributions to people. You can see here that the threats from invasive alien species are increasing significantly, and this is true not only for Europe, but for all the continents, for the Africa, the Americas, Asia Pacific, and Central Asia, and this is true also for all the taxa that they have been examined. So many human activities remain the cause of introduction, establishment, and spread of invasive alien species. And if things remain unchanged, it is estimated that the invasive alien species number is going to increase even more, about 1/3. But actually, if nothing is done, we expect that this change is going to be even bigger. And this number is going to increase even more. And some of the dramatic effects and very negative impacts that invasive alien species have, they're in combination with climate change. You can see this is a fire that took place in the Americas, but and if this grass here was not invasive, then the impacts would have been a lot less of climate change. But because of this grass, it was more dramatic and serious. So the best way to get rid of invasive alien species is not to let them enter a new territory at the first place, and prevention and preparedness are the best way to tackle the problem of invasion, of biological invasions and invasive alien species. And the positive message is that people are at the heart of the solution. So we can do something about them much easier, perhaps, that we can do something about climate change. If we fail with prevention and we fail to be prepared, then we have to try eradication, containment, and control. And sometimes this can be cost effective, but most of the time it's not very cost effective. And here is where Pablo Escobar comes in. So Pablo Escobar was a major drug lord who introduced in his villa hippos. Hippos are very aggressive animals, so I'm not sure like what he needed them, but it was not for a good cause for sure. And when he died, these hippos, they spread in the wild, and now it costs Colombia about 3 million per year in order to control the population of these hippos. And this is a conceptual diagram, and it shows how the biological invasion process develops in time. At the beginning, we don't have any alien species. Then alien species are introduced and get established, and then they can spread, and then they become widespread. And if we don't do something during this lag phase here, it's very likely that the costs are going to be increased in order to reduce the population of these invasive species. And, you know, we won't reduce them most of the time below threshold levels. So it's very difficult to tackle the problem. But prevention, as I said, is a key. And tackling the pathways is a very good method to get rid of the problem. For example, we could enforce import controls, pre-border, border, and post-border biosecurity. They're essential. And especially prevention is very important on islands like Cyprus, but also critical in the marine and connected water systems, where you understand that it's very, very hard to do anything about invasive alien species once once they have been introduced and have spread. And of course, we need the funding and the capacity building and a lot of cooperation in order to tackle the problem. Eradication can be successful. Eradication is when we try to wipe out the invasive alien species at the initial stage of the introduction. And it can be done in small islands, but if eradication fails and the invasive alien species spread, then we have to use containment and control. And of course, we have to take some restoration actions, because some of the functions when invasive alien species spread in the ecosystem, they're going to be disturbed. And this is a photo from the Dog Island in Anguilla in the Caribbean that I was very lucky to visit last year for another project that we ran with Professor Helen Roy. And the colleagues there have managed to eradicate rats from this island so that the birds can breed happily and live happily on the island. And it was a huge effort from what they described to us, and luckily it was a successful one. So with this slide, I would like to stress that governments have committed to reduce invasive alien species by 50% by 2030, and this is a very important decision to which the IBES assessment has contributed as well. And there is a lot of evidence that we can have a good result if we can dedicate resources and with long-term commitment. So the expected impacts of the report. So the findings of this report will contribute into achieving international targets on biological invasions, such as the target 6 of the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, but also the target 15 of the Sustainable Development Goals Agenda. And these are some of the lead authors of the assessment. The assessment had to go through many governments, more than 100 governments, in order to be approved. So this was a big moment. And now I would like to take some time to tell you a little bit about the invasive alien species research and the work of our group in Cyprus. So Cyprus is a very large island with strategic importance, and it has been the target of many, many different people from all over the Mediterranean over the years. And this, of course, has caused changes in the natural environment. All the civilizations that arrived to the island, they brought together with them their animals and their plants, and it has significantly altered the landscape. On top of this, we also had two major events like Black Death caused by rats in the early 1000s, and also the opening of the Suez Canal. So all these have altered the environment, the natural environment. And our group is focusing on the research on invasive alien species, surveillance and monitoring, policy and capacity building, and also raising awareness, outreach and citizen science, and also management of invasive alien species. And this is especially true for the mosquitoes. And you can see here the team. Some of the people are working on invasive alien species here, some of the early career researchers. They focus on invasive alien species like Iakovos and Vangelis, and some of them are studying the impacts of invasive alien species on different species like pollinators. So we have a huge interest as a group on alien species and invasive alien species. And one of the biggest tasks we have completed is the CITES database. We identified a few years ago, 10 years ago now, the need in order to have an inventory for Cyprus, in order to know what alien species we have and invasive alien species. And we have been working on this through different Darwin-funded projects. And mostly Iakovos Dimitriou has been focusing on the Cyprus database of alien species and updating for the last 2 years of his previous fellowship, and it has been a huge task. So in this database, if you're interested to learn about invasive alien species, it is online. You can find what alien species we have, where you meet them, where you can find them, information about their establishment status, information about some references. And it can be used to study the trends of invasive alien species, the invasion history, and also during impact assessment, horizon scanning exercises. Some other resources that have been developed through Iakovos projects are these alien alert lists of species, and these very nice fact sheets for Cyprus available in English and in Greek that you can use in order to be informed. And also we have a 9 naturalist project by which when you record invasive or alien species, we get some information in the database. These are some of the publications of the group. And these are some of the new arrivals that we have observed lately on the island. Wasmania, Repunctata, this little land here that Jakob was studying, the two mosquitoes that we are studying, Aedes albopictus, the Asian tiger mosquito, and the yellow fever mosquito, the myna bird, and the striped catfish. So horizon scanning exercises are exercises where we try to predict what species are likely to arrive. And this is the previous work. We looked at what species are likely to arrive and they can affect the human health, and what species are likely to arrive that are going to impact biodiversity. And this is the curve for some of the invasive alien species that we either expect to arrive. For example, the brown marmorated stingback, it's one of them. I had a friend who came back from Greece with a dead brown marmorated stingback in her bag. Luckily, it was dead, but it might arrive alive as well. The harlequin ladybird. So for these species that are over here, we can do prevention. So we can have measures that we can check at the borders if anything arrives on plants and other sources of equipment. And here we have the species that have been recently or quite recently introduced, and we can work in eradicating. And there are currently efforts by different colleagues for the myna, for invasive alien species, and also for the crayfish. And some of the species have been introduced for a long time now. This is the gambusia fish, which is the mosquito fish that was introduced in order to control mosquitoes. And this little fish we can only contain it. And of course, we have species that they're very, very widespread, like the American cockroach, rats, and Acacia salinea. And for these species, we need to have some long-term management. And of course, it is expensive to manage because they're so widespread. This is some other work that we did, and the first record of Aedes albopictus in Cyprus. And we work a lot with citizen scientists, and we have a wonderful network of people who provide information and records on invasive alien mosquitoes. And if you are interested in joining this team, you can either download the mosquito alert and start recording mosquitoes, or you can email us directly and let us know. And here you can see the differences between the two invasive mosquitoes and the native mosquito Aedes cretinus that we have in Cyprus. So by taking a picture of the thorax of the mosquito, we can tell what species you have. So as I said, citizen scientists are helping us quite a lot. And we are doing a lot of raising awareness as well about invasive alien species. This is a BioBlitz, which is an event that takes place for a set amount of time, for 24 hours or 48 hours. And we've done this since 2019. We have been running this in Cyprus. We're going to try to run it this May as well. And this was a pan-European, actually, event where we recorded invasive alien species in many European countries simultaneously. And these are some photos from this event from different locations. And it's great to have public participation and also scientists working together. And also raising awareness. We do quite a lot with children as well. These are some of the materials we have produced for children. We have produced some videos for invasive alien species and invasive mosquitoes in particular, and also some other leaflets that you can find at the Acrotiri Environmental Education or at our website. So thank you very much. And many thanks to all our collaborators. And I'm very sorry about the beginning with the start of the presentation that we couldn't make the screen bigger. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Kelly. It was very interesting presentation. Some of the things I've used for literature review that you have done, the site where the inventory for all the invasive alien species and how you catalog them and whether they're possibly cryptic or invasive. It was very, very helpful in many things that we have done, and I urge others to do so as well. If anyone has any questions, I will allow some time. You can write them on the Q&A field, but I have a question for you. So seeing all this, are you worried about anything in our island at this moment? Is there something that raises your blood pressure when you see it happening, or that you know that we've passed prevention and we need to get to eradication now?
Yes, I think obviously I'm going to talk based on my expertise. I think it's very worrying, the two mosquito species that we have. I don't have a very recent update on the yellow fever mosquito in Larnaca, but the Aedes albopictus, we are monitoring it in Limassol, and we can see that it is spreading and that it is active at the winter months, that it was predicted as well by different models that they do at the Cyprus Institute and elsewhere. So yeah, for me, these two species are a major concern. Also ants that Iakovos is working on. I think it is a good opportunity and we can do something about them. So it would be good to try to run an eradication program for Wasmania and other ant species that are alien or invasive alien. So yes, but of course, you know, there are many species in the marine environment as well. When I swim nowadays, I see this sea urchin that has these very long spines, more and more around Akrotiri. So I don't know what you, the marine scientists, think, but for me, I see that they're very widespread, a few of the invasive species in the marine environment. And of course, you know, these are the most difficult to do something about, I think.
Well, as you said, it's most difficult to do something in the marine environment because it's exponentially more expensive. The resources, like you have to dive, you have to extract them. They're very difficult to be contained. But also through the sea, we have other pathways except from humans, because in an island you need for terrestrial animals or invertebrates, you need the help of a human. But for the sea, because we have the Suez Canal, it's beyond our hand. If it migrates and reach there and establishes, so what we can do is monitor and survey the areas the whole time.
Yes, I think there is also like the ballast water that you can do things about and things that they can carry. So there are some things that can be done, but I agree. I mean, it's much harder.
Yes, definitely. Anyone has any questions for Kelly? Because she has all the answers, believe me.
Oh, I don't have all the answers. You should have asked Helen that was here yesterday, but I will try to answer anything.
Ellen, she's a co-author in the Horizon scanning, correct, and screening that.
Yes, so we have been doing a lot of work together on invasive alien species in Cyprus. And now, actually, we started with Cyprus and with Akrotiri. And now we are doing a lot of work together at the UK overseas territories, some islands in the Caribbean and stuff like that, about raising awareness, about prevention, and also databases like the one we have now for Cyprus. So I think it has been really good. And of course, you know, we have the support of the Darwin program, which really helps.
Yeah, they really do. And they do support anything that comes from Cyprus because they get from all the overseas territories, but they really support Cyprus as well. We have
Mm,
a question from Carlos.
mm.
Thanks so much for this presentation. I'm wondering if you have ever experienced opposition from the general public to perform removal activities of invasive species. It's a great question.
Well, Carlos, it's lovely that you're here. Thank you for listening. Actually, with mosquitoes that I mostly work on, I have no opposition. I have quite the contrary. You know, it's like people usually ask me, oh, let's use chemicals, let's do this, let's do that. So this is why we try to raise awareness to make sure that we use the best methods. But it's true, there are some invasive species that are very, very charismatic, very beautiful, very cute. And yes, for this species, the general public is not happy about. Yeah, but I mean, I'm not managing them. I'm managing the ones that nobody likes, so I don't have much of a problem. But I'm sure other colleagues do.
Kelly, did it ever come to your attention on why Cypriots don't get involved with citizen science at citizen science as much as other people in abroad? They're not as involved as they are in other countries.
Yeah, I think to be honest, Christiana, I mean, citizen science is something that myself has got involved in the last few years. I used to be like more conserved in my lab and doing my own thing. But I realized, especially when I started working in Akrotiri and interacting more with the people at the Environment Center, that raising awareness and trying to involve everybody and making them part of the solution than part of the problem is really, really essential. So I got involved much more. I think it's quite new to us. Even like iNaturalist and stuff like these apps that exist in order to record invasive alien species, they're quite new to most people, but I think we will catch up. And there are many excellent people who are involved, and they do a lot of great work, like Enalia, Physis, and many other organizations, and people like you and Marios and Mariana. So I think we're gonna do well. We just at the start.
Yeah, I think we need to make them a little bit more sensitive towards the environment, get them out there. They need to get out there. Sometimes it's best if you get out there and meet the world around you, then you become a little bit more involved. We have one more question. Do you know of any terrestrial invasive species in Akrotiri or Cyprus that disappeared unassisted?
I don't actually know. No, do you? No,
Mm,
I'm not aware of any. I think it wouldn't be an invasive for Cyprus if they disappeared as well. It would just be an alien.
yes. Yes,
So
because it doesn't take space, it doesn't compete with the endemic ones or the
yeah,
native
so I
ones.
mean, the invasive ones would have many negative impacts on nature and biodiversity first, but also, you know, on people somehow. Unless it is one of the species that has been intentionally introduced by people, which will have some positive benefits. Like, for example, acacias, we know that they're very bad for biodiversity and for the environment, but people take firewood from them. They like the yellow flowers. They find them pretty. They like the shade. So, you know, things like that are very, very difficult to manage and to change the public perception in
Yeah,
order
and
to do something
especially
about them.
with Akakia, the poachers love them because
Yes,
they get small birds and the belobuya.
yes,
They put the nets there or the verga that they're called, and they catch the small birds. So this is
yes,
one of the most important reasons that they start cutting them at Pila, and many people, many have threats and volunteers that went to eradicate Akakia or even chase them down. I mean, I know from bird life that they chase them down with guns and rocks. And yes.
Yes, and this is also, Christiana, one of the examples that shows all the negative impacts, indirect in a way, of an invasive alien species. Because, you know, if acacias were not that dense and very good in helping people hide things in there and stuff like that, things would be better. But also from my own experience, acacias, for example, in the Akrotiri forest, when they're really dense, native mosquitoes that we have, the wetland mosquito species that we have there, they go and hide in there, and they're protected from the sun and the strong winds that we have in Akrotiri, so they live longer. So you can have all sort of different impacts that you don't expect or you never imagine at the beginning when you introduce a new species in a new location that doesn't belong there.
That is so true. So thank you, Kelly. Thank you for everything. Thank you for joining us. And we hope we have you again, and we continue this Science Fridays. See you all back next Friday. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Kelly. Bye.